The call is now being recorded. I will be downloading it this afternoon as soon as the meeting's over and converting it into a YouTube link. And I will be sharing the YouTube link with everyone via email. It'll also be posted on our website. For right now, let me share my screen with you. Okay. Okay, so once again, good evening. My name is Joe Apodaca. I'm the principal at Imperial High School. Tonight's Tiger Talk will focus on AB 130, which is Independent Study, Assembly Bill 130 Independent Study for the 2021-2022 school year. Today's August 13th, Friday the 13th, 2021. With me on the call is one of my assistant principals today is Mrs. Den. I also saw Dr. Gozani here. There's some staff on the call and over 22 people so far. So once again, this will be recorded, so we can always post it. Everyone will get the link. But let's go ahead and get started. If you have questions, you can put them on the chat, or you can even wait toward the short presentation, and then I'll take some questions. You can unmute yourself, and I'll be able to take some questions at the end. You can put them in the chat, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Dent to, if she can answer the questions on the chat, please do. If not, I can address them here at the end. Okay, but I don't want to keep you on here longer than 45 minutes to 1 hour, so we'll proceed. So Assembly Bill 130, AB 130, Independent Study, IS, it was law on July 9th, 2021. So what we have to keep in mind is this is strictly for the 2021-2022 school year, where school districts, we are required to offer independent study as an educational option. So I do want to say that independent study has always existed, but school districts or learning educational agencies, LEAs, can be selective about offering independent study because there's some components to it that we hopefully will be able to kind of explore. The Education Code 5145 also requires parent notification, or AB 130 requires parent notification of all districts that notify parents and guardians of their options to enroll their child or children in in-person instruction or independent study. I think what we need to keep in mind is that those are the options for the 2021-2022 school year. If you think back to last year, 2020-2021, it was distance learning because of the positive cases here in the Imperial County. All we were allowed to offer was distance learning. But I want to make sure that we understand that there is a distinct difference between distance learning, between face-to-face instruction, and independent study. This year, for 21-22, we are required by the state to offer face-to-face instruction, which is a good thing. I think we all agree that face-to-face is a good thing. But we're also required to offer independent study. Once again, not distance learning, independent study. So so our district has sent out a communication indicating to all members or families in our district that option for this year. We also, the law also requires us to have a pupil parent educator conferences prior to signing the independent study written agreement. And I know Mr. Rubio and Mrs. Den have been in contact with families at this stage of the game to set up those conferences where that will have the parent, the student, and the administrator, and the counselor, as well as the teacher. But the most important component, not most important, but the critical, we have to have the parent, the student, and at least one educator there, and that'll be the administrator. the meeting does not have to be in person. It can be via telephone, and it can also be a video conference via Zoom, but also in person. In order, with the purpose of addressing questions and explaining the implications and the requirements of independent study. The law also requires school boards or districts to update board policies to reflect the criteria in Ed Code 5177. All right, that has been done. That was approved at last night's board meeting over in Imperial. Now, I do want to just share independent study, and this is off the California Department of Education website for frequently asked questions for independent study. So, and this is independent study right for my student. So just to give you an idea of what independent study is, information on what is required of the student to be successful and some of the ways in which schools offering IS may vary. So the reason I put this here for us is because I want us to look at really the next part of the quote. Generally, success in independent study requires motivation and a strong commitment on the part of the student, and especially for a young student, his or her parents, guardians, and caregivers. It also requires sufficient academic preparation to enable the student to work independently. Some schools require that students' academic performance be at or close to the grade level, while other schools work with students who have fallen behind by providing or additional individualized support necessary for success. So that's from the California Department of Education. And I just wanted to put that out there because when we're asking ourselves, is independent study right for my student? These are some of the things that we have to ask ourselves to determine if this is the route we want to go. Because once again, I just want to make sure I'm clear the difference between what distance learning is or was last year and what independent study is for this year. All right, so we've sent out inquiry form. We've shared that via email. So if families are interested in independent study, we're asking that if you make that decision, when you reach out to Mr. Rubio or Mrs. Den, I'll say that if your child's last name begins with A through L, you would be reaching out to Mr. Rubio. If your child's last name begins with M through Z, you would be reaching out to Mrs. Den, okay? So what I have here is just a sample of what I've sent you via email. So if you're, after this meeting, you are interested in pursuing the independent study, you would reach out to Mr. Rubio or Mrs. Den in case you haven't done so already. And we would ask that you complete this form, which contains your child's name, last name, ID number, just general information. But we also have a series of questions that we'd like you to answer for us in preparation for that meeting. So we would the first question, we'd like to know why you believe, or what the reason being that independent study is the right option for you and your child in this given moment. And for this school year, because I have to stress, if things move for the better for next year, for 22-23, it's very possible, I said possible, that this option will not be mandated to be offered by school districts or sites. So we want to know, why do you believe it's the right option for your child? And it could be a variety of things. We just want to know where you're coming from. And then provide any previous homeschooling or independent study experience. Has your child or yourself, do you have any experience with homeschool and independent study? Because if most of you're all high school, so I'll keep focused on high school, but in K through 6, it's a little bit more complex because the involvement of the parent is significantly more required at that level. And let me just say, before having the privilege of serving as your principal, at Imperial High School. I'm currently at the beginning of my 8th year. Before that, I served as the assistant principal at Hopeville High School, but I also had the privilege of serving as the principal at the Freedom Academy, which was an independent study alternative school of choice. So that was a K through 12 system that was specialized in independent study as an alternative school of choice. I do have a little bit of experience with independent study, and I do know that in the elementary levels, or it's a lot. The parent involvement is significant. It's significant also in the 9th through 12th, but we're dealing with a little bit more of a more mature student, if you will. So, does the student have an active IEP? Okay, if the child has an IEP, in order to qualify for independent study, we would need to schedule a meeting, an IEP meeting, to determine if independent study would provide a child with FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public school education. So if your child has an IEP, it doesn't mean that he or she cannot participate in independent study, but we do have to have a meeting with an IEP team to determine what if independent study is going to give the child FAPE and what accommodations and or adjustments we can make, right? A student with a 504 may qualify if the goals meet, if the goals or accommodations are within the independent study model. Now, does the student participate in athletics, band, FFA, any extra or co-curricular activities? Participation in independent study doesn't, also you are allowed to participate in any extracurricular as well. And then we have this question here, who will take responsibility for ensuring the child's educational program at home? So we want to make sure, it sounds pretty obvious that it would be the parents, but we would want to know which parent would be the point of contact should your son or daughter start to find in the expectations of the independent study. So also the question is, describe the student's level of familiarity with computers and the internet. You know, would you be considered a beginner, proficient, or advanced? I know in a digital age that we live in, it's like, well, Mr. Apodaca, that's kind of my kids were born using computers, but you'd be surprised. We'd like to know part of the conversation. Also, the student's current reading level. And if you don't know the reading level, we can find, and if the child's been tested here within our district, but really the most recent grade earned in English and math. How did they do in English and math last semester? We also have the transcript that we have access to, but we'd like to know where you are, and it gives you enough room to kind of put down some other areas of concern. Students' attendance record. You know, last we were in distance learning, we're interested in seeing, was the child Zooming during the expected times? Was the asynchronous or the independent assignments, were they done? You may think it's as easy as looking at the report card. Or the report card only tells one story, not the whole story. You know, you might have students who did really well, but struggled emotionally. You might have students who didn't do very well, but had done well in the past for a number of reasons. So these are the kind of conversations we want to have when we meet with you to go over this. What's been the student's attendance record? Has a student ever been recommended for intervention via SARB? Student's current discipline history, again, we also have access to that. But has a student ever been suspended from school, recommended for expulsion? Again, we have that. Those are some of the things we want to discuss a little bit. Does a student have transportation to school for required activities, such as proctored exams, quizzes, state testing, or required synchronous activities? Because even in independent study, there will be a component that's mandated by AB 130 for synchronous interaction at least once a week. So backing up, that's the questionnaire component. So when you meet with the administrator, we'll go over this. We'll review the page of the personal information. We'll look and see the kind of answers that you provided here. Hopefully you'll be able to provide these before you come to the meeting. But if you bring them with you, we'll have them there, and the administrator will go over these questions with you. Now, the next component is the master agreement and stipulations. So in the master agreement, in the document that we provided, and if you don't have it, reach out to us and we'll send it out again. We're going to ask parents to initial to confirm acknowledgement of the expectations, because like I said, last year was distance learning. All LEAs had to offer distance learning, which was something new for everybody, from teachers to principals, administrators, as well as students. So independent study requires a master agreement because the child or the student is completing the work, is doing the bulk of the work independently, okay? So we would check off that both you and your child voluntarily agree to participate in IS for the 21-22 school year. We're not saying you must. We would prefer you come to face-to-face. The science, the research out there clearly states that the most effective way of educating people is face-to-face. Now, there are online components and whatnot, but for educating children in the K through 12 setting, face-to-face would be the ideal. But we understand that this year, there's still some uncertainty, but it is a voluntary component. Students in IS at Imperial High School, you're going to receive primary content delivery and instruction by way of the Edmentum learning software. That is our district-approved online program that we use for credit recovery. However, it's not a watered down. It is a very rigorous piece, because the rigor that we provide in independent study must be equal to what you're getting in a face-to-face component. Now, the difference is, once again, that you're working independently, which, if you allow me to refer back to the first or second slide, where the California Department of Education stipulates that the child should be motivated and can work well independently, okay? Students in the IS program, they'll be assigned a 6-period schedule for each semester, okay? 6 periods that'll all be online courses. Students are going to be expected to engage in a minimum of 1 hour per course per day and complete 1 week worth of work per course week. So it's very similar, if not exactly the way a face-to-face setting is. Face-to-face, you have 6 classes, you go to 6 classes a day, the teacher assigns homework, the student does it independently. So in our independent study option, the student will be assigned 6 classes through Edmentum. There's one teacher who oversees that. So if the student is not logging in to at least 1 hour per day per course and isn't advancing through this or through the lessons, then the teacher is going to be able to see that. Because if I'm the teacher, I can log in, I can see all my students who are in my system, and I can track their progress on a daily basis. I can in real time. So students are going to have to participate 1 hour per course per day and complete 1 week worth of work per the course weekly. Students will have access to support by the teacher at designated synchronous times, which means parents that they'll need to come in, according to the law, at least 1 time a week for synchronous intervention and synchronous instruction, so that the teacher can provide some one-on-one and some face-to-face guidance. And we're looking for, it'll be a minimum at least 1 hour a week. At any time, though, that the student or parents you can request transferred back to face-to-face. Now, the law stipulates that we have 5 days to get you, 5 school days to get you back into face-to-face. So all core classes, your English, your science, your social science, your mathematics, that will be provided. Like in any situation, the student may be placed in a different elective depending on class maximums and availability. Now, what you have to keep in mind is, well, what if my son or my daughter is an independent study for 3 weeks and she's doing really well, but I feel better that things have changed. I want to go back face to face because we feel more comfortable. If the student is doing well academically, then they'll be placed in those classes, all right, their English class or math class, and then those grades that they have will transfer with them. Different than if we're at Imperial High School and we're 3 weeks into the semester and we have a student who comes in from another district who's got straight A's or A's and B's, and then we identify those grades, we evaluate the transcript, and we place that child in the appropriate classes. A lot of times when students transfer in from San Diego or even other schools within the Imperial County, they offer different electives than we do. So we have to place them in an elective that's similar or that's going to get them elective credit. But the transfer grade is the transfer grade. The teacher then takes their grade. If it's an A, they don't start with an F, they just keep moving forward. By the same measure, if your child is an independent study and they're failing all their classes, God forbid, then they will transfer back in and they will transfer in with those grades. So if the grade's an A, that's what they transfer with. If the grade's an F, that's what they transfer with. If the grade's a C, that's what they would transfer with back into the face-to-face component. Now, what they get out of the face-to-face is they get the daily interaction with the teacher, with the support. It's a different model. So I just want us to understand that independent study is a real thing that's existed in education for many years, but this year we're having to offer it to everyone, and we will provide the supports as well. Okay. Now, students in IS must participate in weekly face-to-face meetings with the master teacher so that we can monitor progress and engagement, as well as to provide support. IS teachers, we can remotely unlock lessons and quizzes. However, students will be expected to complete all unit and final assessments in person at designated times. Students who fail to log on daily or maintain appropriate progress for 2 consecutive weeks or 3 weeks in total for any semester will be referred for evaluation to determine if IS is appropriate for the student's education. So let's say a week passes and the student's not doing any work or any assignments. That's going to trigger a phone call and documentation from the teacher because the teacher can see. Then it's going to probably trigger a phone call from Mr. Rubio or Mrs. Den to figure out what's going on. If that happens for 2 consecutive weeks in any semester, we're going to have a meeting to determine what's going on and to see how we can support you. Okay. If it happens for 3 weeks in total in any given semester, then we're going to need to sit down and evaluate what's going on, because the education code still requires that the student attend school. If it's not face-to-face this year, it's through independent study. So when we take attendance, when you're sitting in your seat, Joe, Jessica, Sergio, David, we take attendance. And that's how we log attendance. Through independent study, attendance is taken by the work that's submitted for that week. So if you're not doing the assignments every day for that week's worth of work, then that's where it impacts the attendance. So if you miss 3 days, you have to be completing at least 60% of the assignments that are provided via independent study. Now, students who fail to keep appropriate progress, remain disengaged, and do not adhere to the expectations after we've intervened, we've provided some supports, then we're going to recommend the students for what's called the Student Attendance Review Team. That's an intervention before SARB where we sit down with the administrator, with the teacher, with the family, with the student to identify why the child hasn't been making progress, why they haven't been attending the face-to-face intervention, why they're not logging in and completing the assignments. And then we'll have to discuss alternatives there. And hopefully, after we sign some documentation, that'll get the child back on track. But if that doesn't, Then Student Attendance Review Board, SARB, is also an intervention that's in place, because then we're looking at involving alternative education, community school, Department of Social Services, because if a child is staying home through independent study, we as parents are responsible for ensuring that our child is doing the assignments. And if they're not, we need to know why, and we need to be able to provide that support for them. And if 3 weeks pass in any given semester, and they don't have to be consecutive, it's just 3 weeks, then we need to identify what's going on. But if a family says, hey, I don't care, Mr. Apodaca, I'm not sending my kid back to school. Okay, then we have to make sure we're following the process to ensure that your child is getting, if coming to school isn't an option for you, then independent study is the only other option. So we need to make sure that we're making progress. And if not, then the possibility of recommendation to alternative school or community school because of attendance is something that is also an option or a possibility, but that's as a last resort. We're hoping, our relationships with our parents at Imperial High School, we're really blessed because you guys are very supportive, and we want to be supportive. But I think all of us agree that the children need to get educated. So at one of these meetings, we would verification of contact information for the parent and the guardian, written notification to the parent or guardian of lack of participation and engagement in independent study, develop a plan for pupil needs and social emotional implications in addition to health and social services as necessary, a concise and clear review of the master agreement in addition to any additional signatures for agreements, consideration for return to traditional face-to-face instruction. So this is what happens at the end, where if a child is just being negligent and not doing the assignments, we need to find out why. There could be a number of reasons as to why that's happening. Our objective is to serve the families as best we can and identify why the child is struggling. Then the master agreement requirements, it's in the pages that we provided for you. So during the meeting, the students' educational options, course offerings, support, master agreement will be discussed. Past academic progress will be, and the team will determine if IS is the appropriate option for the student and the family. Now, the contract is valid for 1 semester. Students with IEPs as defined in Ed Code 56026 may not participate unless the student's IEP provides for that participation. So like I said earlier, we would have to have an IEP meeting, convene the team to determine if the independent study is going to provide FAPE, free and appropriate public school education. Now, failure to meet the stipulations on the master, in addition to failure to complete assignments, resulting in a loss of 3+ days of attendance, will result in the following: letter of concern to the parent, evaluation meeting with the principal, designee, parent, teacher, and student, loss of extracurricular participation in extracurricular activities, termination of agreement, and return student to traditional school setting. Okay. Then on the same agreement, these are the subjects. It'll be like, for example, English 11, Algebra 2, US history, and then the 2 electives, and then they're worth 5 credits. It would be the fall or the spring semester, and then we would put the dates of the beginning of the semester to when the semester ends. And then you have reporting, student required to report weekly. We would identify that in what way and what day, what time, and then what place. Then we get to the signature page, master agreement and stipulation. We have read, agree to all terms of this agreement and to all provisions and components herein. So the student would sign, the parent, guardian would sign, the supervisor, the administrator, and then the counselor. We would have the counselors there to sign. If the counselor is not there, then the administrator would work with the counselor and the family to make sure that they get the classes assigned to them that they need in order to make adequate progress toward graduation. So I guess in essence, I went over in a little bit of detail what the request for independent study master agreement per AB 130 and some of the things that in terms of what IS is going to look like here at the Imperial High School. I hope I cleared up some questions. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you don't have any questions now because it's Friday and you get a question later on, I will put my cell phone number on the chat. Most of you have it. I think I put it out there quite a bit. You can reach out to Mr. Rubio, Mrs. Dent, myself, for any regarding independent study. So questions? Thank you, Tiger Pride. Let me stop sharing. And
Mr. Apodaca, we had a question in the chat about what electives are available for independent study students.
see, and that's the thing. And through independent study, there will probably be a more selection of electives because at Imperial High School, we're limited in electives and we're working on trying to grow that. But you would have a variety of electives available to you through the Edmentum program. And during the conference, when, once you get your core in, you would have some choices in terms of what electives you can take. So there's a lot, there's more electives available through Edmentum or through our online programs that we have in face-to-face. So, and that component is good, but it's all online. And I have a number on the chat there. Thank you. IEP, well, IEPs and 504s all fall under IDEA. So an IEP, you would have to get, that's a process of being referred for an individualized education program. And we would have to communicate with our special education department. There's SST. If a child is not an IEP, there's a process for that. If your child has an ailment that prohibits them from functioning or from performing day-to-day activities, they may qualify for for protection under 504 law. So for example, if a child suffers from, I'm going to say diabetes, and the child, there's times where they have to change their insulin or whatnot, then that's a circumstance that a child without that ailment, that wouldn't have to work with. So a lot of times a child with diabetes is entitled to protection under 504, and they don't participate in any of the accommodations. Sometimes a child may need a little bit more time on assignments and things of that nature, but those decisions are made as an IEP team. It would be Mrs. Din or Mr. Rubio, and then it would be the counselor, and then the teachers preferably to determine, and the parent to determine to gather as much information about the child as possible to make the decision. So the decision is made as a team in terms of a 504. An IEP is a little bit more complex because that has to be, there has to be a referral made to the department, to a special education department, but we have a series of protocols that we go through to determine if a child is going to be referred for special education or an IEP. Yes, FFA, can they participate? If we do not have FFA, and they can participate in FFA as an extracurricular activity. Now, for example, they can participate in the raising of an animal. They can participate in the band activities, but we don't offer FFA class through Edmentum. We don't offer band class through Edmentum. There might be some music electives that we can take through Edmentum, but as far as being in, like if I'm a 9th grader who wants to take ag biology because I'm an FFA student, ag biology is a specialized, it's biology. You'll get the biology and you can still participate in the ag program, but you won't take ag biology with, say, Mr. Musket or one of our ag teachers. You'll take biology through the Edmentum, because at the end of the day, the standards that are offered have to be in line with what we're offering face-to-face. Yeah, if you're a student who's going to look at independent study, registration on Monday, ladies and gentlemen, it's already, if you've done your acknowledgements, your registration is pretty much done. We're not going to be doing verification of residency unless we have questions and we reach out to you. So on Monday is going to be really to come in over and pick up check out a device. We're asking, if you need to do your transportation information, you can purchase a yearbook on Monday. You can also, we're asking all families to fill out the lunch applications. So we're going to have dual enrollment people there from IVC, promoting their classes. We're doing a mindfulness project with UCLA. They'll be there to provide some information on that. So, those are some of the things that are happening on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Do we have, yeah, I see the chat about, do we have to sign an agreement every semester? The answer is yes. At the beginning of each semester, a new agreement starts. The master agreements are good for one semester. And if your child, if what I described is like, what, my child could probably do pretty well with this. So, they're fairly independent, they do well academically, then it may be something to consider. But again, we'll get into details on that. You'll get into those details with Mr. Rubio and Mrs. Den during that conference.
Are you sending out, or maybe I missed it, Mr. Apodaca, are you sending out a schedule for what time on Monday we're coming to pick up the devices and all of that?
Absolutely, yes, I'll be sending that out. On Monday, it's going to be from 8. I'll say it here, but I will be sending it. I wanted to send something today, but I'm not very good with creating nice flyers. So I'm getting some help with that right now as we speak. So I'm hoping that tomorrow morning I'll send that off. But just in a nutshell, Monday morning from 8:30 to 10 o'clock is set apart for seniors. From 10 to 11:30 for 11th graders. And then we're going to break for lunch, and then from 1 to 2:30 for 10th graders. And then Wednesday is going to be 8:30 to 10:30 for 9th graders. Now, if that time doesn't work, we're going to be fine. You can show up and get your device. We break it down like that. We prefer that to just kind of eliminate congestion, especially since we are not out of this pandemic. Okay, we're able to do face-to-face instruction. Obviously, indoors we're all required to wear masks. That's going to be another tiger talk as we get closer to come into the year. Let's see. I hope that answered your question in a nutshell. I'm getting some registration is done online this year, just like last year. So what you got to do is just go into Parent View and complete your acknowledgements for 21-22. You're not going to go through a whole registration. If you're back with our district, you're just going to check the acknowledgements and you should be good to go. If you have questions, you can reach out to our registrar's office and we'll be happy to help you out. Oh, there's a good question. Are students required to check out a device or may they use their own? We prefer that they check out a school device because just for accountability purposes, at the beginning, if they use their own, I think we're going to be okay. But just know that we're working toward making sure that every child has a school issued device. All right. Yes, 9th graders is on Tuesday from 8:30 to 10:30 on Tuesday. Yes. The board policy was adjusted and approved at last night's board meeting. I'm looking at the question, is there a deadline for enrolling in IS? We need to get that done first 30 days of school. So the sooner you can reach out to Mrs. Den or Mr. Rubio, the sooner we can have that meeting and the sooner we can get you started. Now, just keep in mind, if you get started and you're there for a week, 2 weeks, and it's just like, you know what, this isn't for me, or this isn't working, or you know what, I need some more interaction. then we have 5 days. You would make that request to the administrator, and then you have 5 days to, we have 5 days to put you back in class. Independent study at the high school, the online program is through Edmentum. Thank you, Mrs. Dan. And look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a parent myself. I mean, I'm an uncle. I mean, it's tough. And I'm not going to lie to you. The best way to educate children is face to face. I mean, and even that, there's work that we can do as an education system to continue to get better. But I think in any profession, if you're here on this call and you're not a teacher, maybe you're an attorney, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you work in retail, maybe you're an entrepreneur. I think all of us would agree that we can always get better, that every profession can get better. All right. So education is no different. The only difference is education is the best profession in the world. I'll say that because we get to work with kids, and it really is a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And most teachers, if not all teachers and administrators, the reason we do what we do is because we love working with young people. Principals and assistant principals love working with young people, but we also love working with teachers and counselors. All right. So it's if we can have as many people on campus, that'd be a great thing. But I also understand the apprehension and the desire, if you will, to consider independent study, which is what we're offering right now. A lot of times folks will say, well, what about distance learning? It's completely different. And we as a school, we can only offer what the state tells us to offer. Last year, we couldn't even offer a hybrid program because all we could do based on our positivity cases is offer distance learning. Right now, based on the most recent data in the Imperial County, about 80% of the adults are vaccinated. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that the numbers won't change tomorrow or the next week. Right now, the only thing we can count on is inconsistency. The only consistent thing is inconsistency. So things can change from one day to the next. But for the 21-22 school year, it looks like for now that it's going to be face-to-face instruction or independent study. There's a question, are the teachers and administration mandated to have vaccination or tested weekly for COVID-19? That actually came out yesterday or the day before, where we have legislation coming down where staff, school employees will be either, if they have not been vaccinated, will be required to test for COVID weekly or twice a week. I don't know, but that's not hot off the presses because it came out, I believe, yesterday or the day before. But teachers, all school employees, including administrators, certificated, classified, will have to, if not vaccinated, will have to be tested for COVID-19. But that's just the adults. As of right now, the students are not required to be vaccinated. So. Yeah, the 21-22 district acknowledgements are available. If you can't find them, you can send either an administrator an email and we'll forward it to Mrs. Cardenas. But if you email Mrs. Cardenas at lcardenas@imperialusd.org, she is our registrar. Mrs. Din, if you could put that in the chat for me, that'd be great. Mrs. Cardenas is doing an awesome job. We're close to 1,400 students total enrollment right now at Imperial High School. Every classroom is being used. I think that's a good problem. It's very exciting. As all of you know, there's also construction happening right on campus. So we have a lot going on. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. And I mean that sincerely. I mean that fun, not sarcastically, but fun as in fun. So it's 6:16. I know I've a lot of information. I hope it was organized in a way that that you can, that it makes sense. If it doesn't, if you'd like to talk a little bit next, give me a call or shoot me a text, and then I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And look, a lot of times I don't want to ask any dumb questions. That doesn't exist. Dumb questions do not exist. It is my pleasure to answer your questions, to listen to your suggestions, to listen to your criticisms, constructive criticisms. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to serve. We're here to serve our students and their parents. And I'm here to serve our students, our parents, my administrators, and my teachers and my counselors. So I may not always be able to accommodate exactly what you want, but we will work as hard as we can to educate your child as best as possible. Okay, there was a question on the chat. Will we get our schedule after registration Monday? Actually, no, you're not going to get your schedule. You're going to see your schedule in parent or student view, I believe, but I'm so sorry, it's not going to happen till Wednesday. Okay, it's not going to happen till Wednesday. And I know if you have, everybody wants to see that, and I get it, I understand, but we are impacted right now with enrollments, which is, like I said, it's a good thing. And before we publicize everybody's schedule, we want to make sure we have them as close to correct as possible. All right, so I appreciate your patience in advance. Feel free to give me a call and tell me how upset you are about that, and I'll just listen. But thank you for that question.
Mr. Apodaca,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to know, when is the 9th grade orientation?
Yes, sir. The 9th grade, and I'll send that out too. The 9th grade orientation is on Thursday, August 19th from 8 to 12. And they'll meet in the gym. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I really appreciate the time you're taking to explain to us what's going on. And also, I have another quick question. I was in there for the Zoom meeting. Let's say there's a COVID case in the school. I know you guys will inform us what the procedure is, but do you guys have like a plan or a contingency plan that will take an effect if that happens?
As a matter of fact, sir, one of the talks for next week is going to be focused, like tonight's talk is focused entirely on independent study. Before class starts on the 23rd, I'm going to call a Tiger Talk that's going to focus exactly on what you just asked, so I can explain to you the parameters and all the guidelines that we're getting from the California Department of Public Health, and show you a slide with information that I can break down for you so that we can understand. So that one is coming next week, and I also record them and I share the link and I post it on the website. It's a great question, but I also want to take an evening where I dedicate just to our parameters and procedures in dealing with potential outbreaks and things of that nature, and what we're going to have in the classrooms and how we're going to handle that. So that one is coming to you, as well as another one that where we'll focus on expectations, just general expectations back on campus when we get into phones and electronic devices and dress code and all that good. So I'm looking at possibly 2 to 3 Tiger Talks next week sometime. So keep your eye on your emails, and we'll be addressing those.
Thank you, Mr. Apodaca, and go
Thank
Tigers.
you. Thank you.
Mr. Apodaca, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
For the orientation that will be on Thursday, is it also going to be on Zoom, or it's only in the gym?
I need to check with that. It's my understanding it's just going to be it's just going to be in person. But let me check with that to be sure before I say that. But I haven't heard that it was going to be virtual. I've heard it's just going to be offered face to face. But let me look into that for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Apodaca?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, will it be teachers from Imperial High School giving instructions for this independent study? I mean,
Yes,
what kind of support will they be getting?
Yes, sir. Independent study will be given by teachers. See, independent study, the way independent study works is, okay, I'm an English teacher, and I am a credentialed English teacher, even as we speak, as is Mrs. Den. and Mr. Rubio is a credentialed social science teacher. So if I was going to be, I am qualified to be an independent study master teacher, as would be Dr. Kuzani, as would be any credentialed teacher, because we are not necessarily delivering the instruction. If you ask me to teach a math class, I'm going to have a hard time because I'm not credentialed in that area. However, in independent, the math course, let's say your child's taking Algebra 1 through Edmentum, that's a self-paced course. That has the introductions to the course, the pre-assessment, and different components where this child is going to follow pace with that course. That's why it's important that they spend 1 hour at least in each course. What's happened before, in my experience with working in an independent study school, is students will say, well, I'm just going to work on English for all day today. Doesn't work. They fall behind in the other components. That's why the master agreement is so important, because we want to make sure that he's following pace with their math. Now, to answer the question, if the child is struggling with English or with a biology course, then that's when they come in for the face-to-face support at the once a week. And then the independent study teacher, the master teacher, would be able to assess that and then work to see what additional supports we can provide. So the teacher would assess, okay, why are you having a hard time? Well, I see you're logging in, but you're not doing X, Y, and Z, because the Edmentum program provides lessons within the program. So you're not getting the instruction by a live teacher. You're not sitting in Dr. Quazani's class where she's going to have these activities and these different kinds of groups in her lectures, if you will. But you're sitting and you're listening to the lecture or that component through the computer, which works for some students, but for some, it poses more of a challenge, you know. So again, we will provide as much support as we can under what the law requires. And for independent study, under AB 130, it's 1 hour of face-to-face a week. So again, as we get going, we would have to assess and identify what's going on, but support is provided. And again, eventually, if a student is not being successful with the supports that we're providing and working with the family, then hopefully things get better. And then the family can make a decision to either transition back or we keep working. But ultimately, if we have a student who's coming to regular face-to-face and they're failing all of their classes as well, they still come to school. So we have to work to try to get them some intervention. But intervention and with face-to-face, sometimes kids aren't successful. So it's a never-ending quest. So the support is going to be provided, and really initially at the by the required once a week face-to-face interaction.
Okay, so that one-on-one, it's even though if they don't have no questions or anything, they still have to go for 1 hour at least to school. Yeah. That's still the expectation, because we want to make sure that they're getting some synchronous intervention. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:25. We started at 5:31. We've been going about 55 minutes. Mrs. Den, is there anything you'd like to add?
Reach out to me if you have any questions. Happy to help you.
Dr. Quazani, you're on the call. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, the reason why teaching is the best profession is because it creates all the other professions.
That's right.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a quote of the day coming up, Dr. Quazani, right there.
There you go. There you go. No, thank you so much for the information.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to, before we leave you tonight, I want all of you to have first, I want to thank you for coming on, taking time out of your Friday evening to visit with us. I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart that you're all in my prayers and our thoughts. And I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to serve all of you and all of our teachers and counselors and administrators and district leadership in the capacity as a principal at your high school and Phil High School. So if you need anything after this call, if you have a thought, send me a text message. All right. If I don't respond, I'm either asleep and I don't sleep that much, but if I get up, I'll respond as soon as I can. All right. So
Go Tigers!
that's right. You can send the form. You can email it to the designated administrator if you want to send the form online, and we'll go from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, good night. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay strong. Tiger Pride.
Leave meeting.